Hi, I'm Georgia, and next year I'm going to be studying French and Beginners Italian at Keble College, Oxford. I decided to apply to Oxford for a couple of reasons, but I was mainly drawn by the fact that it has the best modern languages department in the UK, and after looking at the course in some detail, I realised that it was the course that I would most enjoy out of several different courses in other universities. In terms of deciding on my subject, I knew I wanted to do French from quite early on, so that was an easy decision, but I initially found it harder to choose a second language to start from scratch. A couple of years ago, I thought I wanted to do Russian. However, I then went on to study Latin at A-level and write an EPQ on the Romance languages, so Italian quickly emerged as the best choice, and my interest in Italian literature developed from there. I had a harder time choosing which college to apply to until I got some advice from some past Oxbridge candidates who suggested choosing a college primarily based on the tutors who taught there and what their subject interests are, because you'll most likely have tutors from the college you apply to in your interview. So aside from a few that I definitely didn't want to go to, I made a list of all the colleges and put down the French and Italian tutors who belonged to each one, alongside their main interests, which you can easily find out by looking on the college and faculty websites. I then quickly ruled out several colleges where I didn't share any interests with the tutors and narrowed it down to a handful which seemed to align with what I was most interested in. I only did my UCAS application at the beginning of my gap year, not in upper sixth, so I had more time to do some reading and have a think about the short list of colleges that I had made. And as I was reading and developing my interests, it soon became obvious that Keble would be the best fit for me in terms of the tutors there. On the one hand, it could be a slightly risky strategy because it might mean that at interview you end up being asked questions on a very specific topic by someone who's a world-leading expert in that area, which is what happened to me. But if you feel confident that you've done enough reading and have interesting things to say on the topic, then you could end up having a really good discussion on a subject that both parties are interested in, which ultimately will make the tutors more inclined to want to teach you in the future, which is a big part of what the interviews are about. Obviously, things like accommodation and college facilities are important too, so I researched that side of the colleges as well, but many of the colleges are quite similar, so my main motivation for choosing Keble was the tutors in my subjects who teach there. Preparation for the admissions test was also really important for my application because one of the tests I had to do was unlike anything else I had done before. For modern languages, with one language from scratch, I had to do the MLAT and the LAT, and thankfully there are quite a few past papers online for both of those. So I did each past paper, some more than once, in the run-up to the exam in November. However, there are only mark schemes for some of the papers, not all, so I'm really grateful to my teachers who helped me go through the papers and gave me tips on my technique, as well as marking lots of them for me. The most helpful thing for me when preparing for the admissions tests was just practicing as much as I could over a long period of time, picking bits I had gotten wrong out of papers and making sure I understood them and practicing under timed conditions so that I was used to the time pressure by the time of the exam. In that respect, for me, the prep for the admissions tests was relatively straightforward because it's much like any other exam that you prepare for. However, I found the interview prep a lot harder because I was really worried about the interviews and hadn't done many before. My teachers were so helpful in this area. They gave me lists of past questions that had come up at modern languages interviews before. You can find similar lists for other subjects online. So I was able to think about my answers, jot down some points, and discuss the questions with other people, usually my family, because the interviews are very much a discussion. I don't think any of the past questions I had looked at came up in my interviews, but it didn't matter because the practice that I had done of being faced with a hard question and thinking out loud on your feet was what really helped me. So I wasn't daunted by new questions in my interviews. I also did several mock interviews with different teachers and with a current Oxbridge student, which were absolutely invaluable. My first one was awful, my second one was okay, my third one was better, my fourth one was good. The feedback from these helped guide my interview prep in the run-up to the interviews, and I found I was more relaxed in the real thing, having gone through several mock interviews first. I also looked at lots of literature extracts in my mock interviews and practice sessions with my teachers, practicing analysing unseen poems and prose in an interview setting, which was really helpful and formed quite a large part of my real interviews. I had one interview for French and one for Italian, and on the whole, they were what I was expecting, thanks to all my mock interviews. However, I thought that in both interviews, the tutors were much more interested in my skills than in my reading or my personal statement. That's not to say that those things weren't important, because they definitely were, but in the actual interviews, the focus was much more on what I could do than on what I had read or prepared. So in my French interview, we spent a while looking at an unseen prose extract before doing some spoken translations, and then we spoke in French for the rest of the interview, including when they briefly asked me about some of the reading in my personal statement. Similarly, in my Italian interview, we spent almost the whole interview analysing a poem in English, because the Italian side of the course is ab initio, and they didn't ask me at all about the Italian literature I had read. So I felt like the interviewers were looking more for good literature analysis skills and good speaking skills rather than anything else. Ultimately, someone teachable, not someone who had prepared lots of opinions in advance. The support I received from my teachers and from OE mentors was instrumental in my application process, because it's so important to have advice from people who have either gone through the process before or helped others to go through it, and have lots of experience of what Oxbridge are looking for in candidates. So my advice for future applicants would be to really make use of the resources that the school provides, but also to be proactive and do your own research. I would also say it's really important to enjoy the process regardless of the outcome, because if you really invest in it, you'll get so much out of it in terms of skills and experience gained. I think the process prepares you well for studying at university level, whether at Oxbridge or another university, because it's very much self-driven. It gives you confidence speaking about your subject in depth, and it also helps you to develop your specific interests within your wider subject area. Thank you and good luck for your applications.